Got you there with Sean Delaney.
I'm Sean Delaney, and on this episode of the What Got You There podcast, I sit down with entrepreneur and author GINO WICKMAN to talk all about entrepreneurship and uncover the essential traits it requires to be a thriving entrepreneur. We also talk about what it takes and what he's done with over 130,000 businesses to transform them to a profit and acceleration machine. So if you're curious about entrepreneurship and accelerating your business, you're going to love this conversation with GINO WICKMAN.
Got you there with Sean Delaney.
GINO, welcome to What Got You There. How are you doing today?
Great to be here, Sean. Looking forward to this.
I'm very much looking forward to this. I'd actually like to begin with a quote by Marianne Williamson that we both like and admire. And it's, our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. I would love to know and just hear you unpack that quote and what it means to you.
So that's interesting. And I don't know if you're pulling that from any of my work, but that to me is probably one of my top 10 favorite quotes. And I cannot tell you how many people I have sent that to. So what it means to me is, it's like we're going to kind of begin at the end here, because my wish for all beings walking the earth is to let your freak flag fly. Okay. And so all of my work is around, all the way from helping someone who thinks they're an entrepreneur all the way to helping them to live their optimal life. Well, the end game is where you are freely being you in all of your glory, no holds barred. And so that's what that quote says. And it's hard work. We came out of the womb perfect, and somewhere between then and where we are now, someone, whatever screwed us up. And we've got a lot of stuff to shed and just kind of really connect and be what our souls want us to be. And so that's what that quote says to me, is just fully being you and why you were put on the face of this earth.
That's awesome. Yeah, the way I think about it, I'm always trying to get to a place of unobstructed, authentic self-expression where it's like, this is me fully expressed. And I was just having a conversation with a friend about this. It's like, if you look at the notable, let's call them entrepreneurs, investors, athletes, coaches, it doesn't matter. It's like they have their different style a lot of times, but that authentic self is coming through. So I just love hearing that. That quote really resonates deeply with me. You mentioned some of the things you've gotten to learn across your path, and you've been through a lot and you've accomplished a hell of a lot. You got the scars and the victories to really show what you've been able to do. And I'm wondering, during that entire journey, has there been a mindset of yours that has just been foundational for you to overcome those obstacles and those challenges?
I want to say there's a bunch of them. So I'm kind of,
if you want to riff on a few, I'm curious, like, what encapsulates GINO?
Yeah, no, that's great. So there are a few of them, and I'm just trying to narrow it down to like the top 1, 2, or 3. But certainly one mindset is I truly do. I'm going to give you a bunch of words, want to be great, want to be excellent, want to master my craft, I want to excel in what I do, so greatness is really important to me, but excellence is probably the perfect word, because, I'm always trying to better my best. Another one is just serving. I'm so obsessed about creating value for people, my life is entrepreneurs, and I obsess about helping entrepreneurs live their ideal life and ultimately their optimal life. And so it's a constant focus on that target market and where they have needs, and making sure I'm providing maximum value. And so that's another thing that's always rolling around in my brain. And then maybe this is part of the first one, but just a fanatic about growth. I never want to stop growing. I'm just constantly working on myself, working on my businesses. So there's some rambling for you.
No, I think we got a great encapsulation of what really makes you up. I'm really intrigued though. You mentioned like in service of others. And I'm wondering how this parallel journey goes for you with your own personal growth and development. And when you kind of got to that inflection point, and maybe there wasn't an inflection point, maybe this was part of the process all along, where this is, I'm developing myself so I can better serve others. Was that always the case for you, or did that come later?
I think it came later, so that the first three things I started with, I think were always there. In other words, it's this whole servant mentality and this wanting to add value. I feel like I've always kind of been a teacher at heart, and so every time I learn something, I want to teach it to the world. So regardless of to the degree I was suffering and didn't fully become myself, I was still, teaching people, adding value, doing things. And, God only knows how close I am to fully living from my soul. If I really knew it, I'd be depressed because it's probably like 5%, but I feel like the growth has been so incredible. And whether I'm halfway there or 95% of the way there or 2% of the way there, I'm always a work in progress. It's always just when I kind of start thinking I've got it figured out, there's more stuff to work on, or, more to get better at, more to shed, things like that. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's not like I waited around till I was perfect to start helping people. So it's that I would have lost a lot of time if I took that approach.
Well, there's no perfect answers to any of this. There's so much complexity in life. And I hope we actually hit on diving into the unknown here a little bit later. But sure. It's just fascinating to know the work that you've done, because you actually start off your book, Entrepreneurial Leap, with a chapter, Know Thyself. And I think this is just so fundamental, like the deeper reflection, really truly understanding you a bit more. I would love to know, why did you decide to include that as a chapter in the book, Entrepreneurial Leap?
Yeah, it's so interesting you choose that one because, that's obviously what we've been talking about. And there's two thoughts I'm having. I put it in this book, Entrepreneurial Leap, and I published this book almost 3 years ago, and it is a passion project of mine. But what I'm realizing now, as I look at my 30 years of history and 3 decades of helping entrepreneurs, I've been leaving these breadcrumbs around these disciplines that I live by. And there's a new project, a new book called 10 Disciplines for Managing and Maximizing Your Energy. And we're not necessarily going there, but one of the 10 disciplines is Know Thyself. And so I want to pull those two pieces together, because I certainly left that breadcrumb here. I included it in the 10 disciplines because this gets to my point about people just letting their freak flag fly. And what I believe is, so the discipline is to know thyself, but the secret is I'm trying to get you to be yourself, but you can't be yourself until you know thyself. And so it's this journey of self-discovery. And like I call it, peeling layers till you really get to who you truly are at your soul. But that's what it is about, is getting to know yourself. And this is all the good and bad stuff, all the strengths and weaknesses, all the stuff that's good about you and not so good about you. I'm a control freak. I'm impatient. There's things about me that I'm just not perfect. I'm aware of them. I temper them. I give people in my life permission to laugh at them with me. So I make fun of it, but certainly all of my strengths, I capitalize, maximize, focus on. And then I do everything to be aware of my weaknesses and the things that are not so good about me. Some of these things I cannot get rid of, but they are a part of me. But all of those things, you add them all up, and that is just simply who I am. And I want to be that. Every minute of every day. And then one little quick story that may make sense for some people out there listening. And that is, I got my aha around this when I was 30 years old, and my wife threw a surprise birthday party for me. And I walk into this room and I hear 100 sets of eyeballs yell surprise. And I looked at these 100 sets of eyeballs and I realized that 6 factions of my life were in that room. So there were my high school buddies, there were my new friends, there were my business partners, there were my employees, there was my family, and there was my wife's family. And I looked around the room and I said, holy crap, I realized I'm different with every faction. I said, who am I going to be today? And it was an aha moment about the energy I was burning, trying to bend myself to be what I need to be for all these different factions. And it was that day that I said, I am just going to be me going forward. And that's when I really started this journey of self-discovery to really know myself and just be myself.
That point you just hit on there about the energy you were burning, trying to think how you were going to react in those situations. It doesn't allow your best self to come forward. So I think that's just such a crucial point. It's basically like you're not allowed to maximize your potential because you're being held back by that. But one thing I have to know, like, you're the true expert on this. I mean, worked with 20,000 plus individual entrepreneurs and hundreds of thousands of companies. Talking about strengths and weaknesses there, you said, yes, you've got to maximize those strengths. How should a young entrepreneur approach focusing on strengths, but then also understanding their weaknesses? Like, are they over leveraging strengths, or is it, I need to repair my weaknesses here?
Well, I think the biggest message is, please don't ever try to turn a weakness into a strength. In other words, when you look at ROI, time invested, you're much better off capitalizing on your strengths and focusing on those strengths. And then, like I said, just being aware of your weaknesses, hire people around your weaknesses that are great at doing the things that you are not good at. But also, in terms of your weaknesses, just be aware of them, laugh at them, have fun with them. So again, they're not draining your energy, so that your energy is high. And so it's all about just being aware of them, delegating them where you can, and focus on the strengths. Do not focus on making a weakness a strength. It's utterly impossible.
And that's really helpful. One of the things you've said again and again, even in the short amount of time we've been talking, is just the ability to have fun in certain scenarios. And it just seems to me like this is something that you hit on again and again. I'd love to just hear you unpack that.
Yeah, but re-ask that question, because when you say fun, I get where you might be going there. I don't recall saying fun. So just re-ask that in a way that I understand exactly what your point is there.
Yeah, it almost seems like, even when we were talking about know thyself, like it's about allowing your freak flag to fly and like really let's enjoy this process, right? Like we're gonna be here one time. We might as well enjoy this freaking process. So it just seems like that's something you operate from. But so many people I've been around, especially in the entrepreneurial world, it's, oh man, like I've got to battle with these suppliers, these customers, like it's a battle. And I'm like, you've dealt with this for 30 plus years, hundreds of thousands of companies. And here you are, and you're like, yeah, let's make this process more enjoyable.
Yeah, so that prompts a couple things, okay? And so I want to create a little bit of context for your audience, because I can tell you and I may bounce around between all the content, and I think it's a good thing, because your audience is interesting to me, and they're what I call racehorses, okay? And so my audience is typically entrepreneurs, and again, I'm helping entrepreneurs build great companies, get everything they want from their businesses. And this new project I talk about, 10 disciplines for managing and maximizing your energy, I say it's for racehorses because it's for everybody. But when I say racehorses, it's people who have the basics of life down. So these are driven people that, eat relatively well, get enough sleep, exercise, and they have work ethic. So they're relatively successful, and typically six-figure earners and beyond, or want to earn six figures. And so to your point, these are driven people. And again, to touch on and create context around all the content, there's Entrepreneurial Leap, which is the book that we're talking about in this podcast, among other content. Then there's Rocket Fuel, which is the concept of an entrepreneur visionary finding their integrator, perfect match to build the company to the next level. Then there's EOS, a system I created that I wrote in a book called Traction. And then there's the EOS Life to help an entrepreneur and their people live their ideal life. And then the 10 disciplines I mentioned. When you ask the question you ask, both audiences come to my mind from a standpoint of, in the Entrepreneurial Leap content, that is for someone who thinks they're an entrepreneur or just took the entrepreneurial leap and they're scratching their head thinking about, am I an entrepreneur? And if so, how do I become successful? Well, in that content, I believe very strongly a true entrepreneur has 6 essential traits: visionary, passionate, problem solver, driven, risk taker, and responsible. And you are born with these traits or you're not. It is DNA genetic encoding. And there's an assessment you can take on the website, e-leap.com. And if you score 90 or higher, odds are you have these traits and you're an entrepreneur in the making. I say all of that, again, long answer to your question, because the reason it's so exciting to us to deal with all of these issues is we are wired for a little bit of chaos. We love solving problems, So again, when you look at those 6 essential traits, one of them is problem solver. We lean into problems. And so where most of the world runs from problems, we run toward problems. We love it. We get energy by solving problems. And so it doesn't make you good or bad, whether you love solving problems or not. It just says, if you don't, being an entrepreneur is probably not for you. And so we just kind of thrive on that. And I always like to say, every leader out there growing a business, you're going to have 6 issues a day to solve. It's the nature of the beast. Some are really big, some are really small, but 6 a day. And you got to love solving 6 problems a day. And that is exhausting. And let's go back to energy draining for most people on the planet. For an entrepreneur, for somebody with these 6 essential traits, it's energizing. I mean, we get a buzz out of solving problems.
Oh, I love that. You said we're going to jump around. We've got 2 visionaries here and I'm saying that based on your online assessment.
Yes. Yes.
Visionary versus integrator here. So yeah, we might be bouncing around. The listeners are very familiar with that.
You know your audience. So if they can handle it, take me wherever you want to take me.
And don't worry, we're going to have the entrepreneur assessment linked up as well. It was funny. I retook it again this morning. So finished with a 91. So I definitely want to dive into some of these in a bit, but I would love to know, like, when did you discover that, you know what? Yeah, me, Gino, I'm an entrepreneur. When did that click for you?
So it's really interesting. There's a quote by Danielle Kennedy that says, we teach what we needed the most. Okay. And that's why I wrote Entrepreneurial Leap, because I'm teaching my 18-year-old self. So I discovered I was an entrepreneur at 29. At 18 years old, graduating high school with a 2.3 GPA and did not go to college because the last thing I ever wanted to do was spend another day in academia. I was an entrepreneur in the making, and I was lost. I was scared. I was insecure. I was a mislabeled derelict. I didn't know what I was. And I just went to work because I knew I wanted to make money. And I had this very messy decade in my 20s. I ultimately took over a family business, did a big turnaround, armed with amazing mentors and a fanatic for learning. But from 18 to 29, it was just this messy period that I didn't know what I was. At 29, when I realized that, oh my God, it was transformative. My point in all of that is I lost 11 years of clarity. So I discovered at 29, I wrote this book, Entrepreneurial Leap, for anyone who is like I was at 18. So 13 to 113, that's the age that this book is written for. If you feel that way, you are different than 96% of the planet, and you feel out of place and out of sorts and confused, you are an entrepreneur in the making. And this book is designed to help you realize why you are here and then go forward and live the life you were born to live.
Yeah, awareness is such a key factor here. You mentioned clarity there. I wouldn't even say only for yourself. It's also like there's other people in your lives. And when you can better understand, maybe you have a child at home who has that entrepreneurial mindset, and you might be not quite the entrepreneur there. It's helpful in understanding so you can work better with the people, the relationships you have in your life. So I actually found the book extremely helpful for that as well. I want to hit on some of these 6 essential traits, and I would love to know, are they even across the board? Like if you're an entrepreneur and you have these 6 traits, are they in balance or are they completely disproportionate?
Imbalance. And unfortunately, you got to have all 6. So I get asked that question so often, what if I only have 5? They are equally weighted, and you've got to have all 6. So sorry, there's no loopholes here, but there is something that's really important for me to share. And that is, I teach something called an entrepreneurial range, which kind of takes the sting off for somebody who scores lower than 90 or is missing a trait. And the entrepreneurial range says, if you picture an arc, and on the left side of the arc are the words true entrepreneur, on the left side of the arc are the words self-employed. And obviously we call this the entrepreneurial range. Well, when I talk about the 6 essential traits in a true entrepreneur, these are people on the right side of that range, of that arc. And so if you think about the greatest entrepreneurs of all time that redline that range, Elon Musk, Oprah Winfrey, Sarah Blakely, Henry Ford, Walt Disney, and then we go all the way to the left side of people that redline the left side of the range. These are one-person shows. These are people that have a side hustle, a freelancer. The point in that is you can still be self-employed and own your own business, but you're probably on the left side of the range if you score low. So I always like to say, if you have handy skills, you can go be a handyman, a handy woman, charge $60 an hour, make $100,000 a year, be busy forever if you're any good. And there's nothing wrong with that. You have total freedom and you're self-employed, but odds are you're not building an organization with lots of people. And then it's varying degrees. So with that said, there are absolutely people that their 6 essential traits are like so extreme, like an Elon Musk. Me, I'm on the right half of the range, certainly, but I'm on about the 75% mark. I'm no Elon Musk. I like to build companies with 50, 100 people in them, not tens of thousands. That's too big and not fun to me. So we're all different. And so what's important here is if you want to be self-employed and you score low on that assessment, it's not a death sentence. you're probably just more of a one-person show lifestyle business type of a business owner, and there is absolutely no shame in that.
No, that's really helpful. I think it's going to add a lot of clarity. You mentioned a few of those legendary entrepreneurs. When you think of those 6 essential traits, is there one true legendary entrepreneur that just comes to mind for you that's like, wow, that is the full embodiment of those?
Well, I mean, my favorite is probably Walt Disney, but
What about Disney?
But then it's like they're all so close and tight. Well, for one, the visionary, I mean, he redlined visionary. He was so creative in his thinking, so unique. But then it feels like it's almost redundant because he's certainly crazy passionate about his thing. So the entrepreneur is always passionate about their product, their service, the dent they want to. They're not passionate in general. You and I are passionate people. This is about passion for the thing you want to create, the dent you want to put in the universe. Obviously an incredible problem solver, incredibly driven, huge risk taker. When you go buy however many hundreds of or thousands of acres he bought in Florida with a vision for, I believe it's Disney World, right? I get land and world confused. So he stands out as somebody that just redlines it, but so does Elon Musk. So did Henry Ford. And again, some of these Steve Jobs is another one. I mean, just incredible.
No, I love hearing just your perspective and your thoughts and what comes to mind for you. One of the things I'm so intrigued by, though, is you mentioned that you personally aren't one of those entrepreneurs who wants to have thousands and thousands of people. And you actually ended up selling your company at a time where were you around? It was between 200 and 400 employees, right? When you guys ended up selling?
Right around 200.
Okay. So I'm wondering, like, how do you understand the metrics that you're going to look at for a decision like that to sell a massive company that you've built up over decades? I'm just wondering what the factors are.
Yeah, so I love it because you're going right to a piece of content in this book. So again, in Entrepreneurial Leap, I write the book in 3 parts, okay? It's called Confirm, Glimpse, and Path. And what we just talked about is confirm, that's where you confirm that you have the 6 essential traits, where you are on the range. Did you score 90 or higher? Glimpse, what I do in Glimpse is show you the life. Once you are one, then I show you the life, countless stories. I help you avoid the 8 critical mistakes. And then I teach a tool I created called My Biz Match. Okay. And so what I'm trying to do with Glimpse is help you see the future as a potential entrepreneur before it happens, because you'll make better decisions. And what My Biz Match does is it tells you the perfect business for you, industry, type, and size. And what I already know about myself with all of my experience is I don't want to have a company bigger than 50 to 100 people. So 200 is too big for me. I need to personally touch and feel and see all the people. I'm that kind of a person. That company now has 500 people now, 3 years after I sold it. It's growing as fast as it was growing when I was building it. It's just not fun to me at that size. So I know that about myself. Every entrepreneur is different. Some entrepreneurs should never have more than 3 employees, and some should have 300,000 employees. We are all so different. And so the whole idea is it's a journey of self-discovery, a psychological, philosophical journey to self-discover you and what you're meant to build. And at the end of the day, if it's a $4 million, 40-person heating and cooling company that throws off a 20% profit, amen and hallelujah. And by the way, it's going to be hard as hell to build that. So there's no shame in that. And what the media is teaching us is if you're not building a $1 billion tech unicorn, you're worthless. It's a travesty. So we are all unique and different. And the more you know yourself, here we go again, and know what you want to build, what you're built to build, amen and hallelujah.
No, that's awesome. There's nothing even to expand on. That's just spot on right with that. I am wondering, one of the things you seem to do extremely well is obviously you're a visionary, but you understand to see broad patterns way before anyone else. And I'm always intrigued by pattern matchers and pattern spotters. Is that something you were born with, or is that a skill you've cultivated over time?
I think it's 100% born with, so there's a profiling tool called Kolbe, and I'm not going to teach Kolbe, Kolbe. Very powerful, simple tool that shows you where you put your energy in 4 areas. And I just happen to have a Kolbe with my level of fact finder and my level of quick start that helps me see patterns and trends. And so Kathy Kolbe, the creator of that tool, she has the same Kolbe as me, and she talks about, how she's able to see patterns and trends. So people with this particular Kolbe. So I just have this, it's freaky, but when I see a bunch of data points, enough times, I just see patterns and trends really fast. So I created EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, out of working with my clients for 5 years, 500 sessions, 50 companies. And with all of those reps that I got in, and this is not thin slicing, this is not the 10,000 hours, this is not what I'm talking about here. It's just my gift that I fortunately have. I just see it so quickly. And that's how I created the 6 key components that every business needs to strengthen, because I saw that the hundreds and hundreds of issues they were sharing with me and facing and we were solving, they all came back to 6 root issues. And so that's where the 10 disciplines comes from. That's where the 6 essential traits. So working with thousands of entrepreneurs, now 20 years in and 2,000 sessions and thousands of entrepreneurs, these 6 essential traits, it's just so obvious to me now. In other words, you couldn't beat this belief out of me. So I believe it's a gift. I believe I was born with it. Hopefully it can be taught, but nobody taught it to me. It's not like I went to Pattern and Trend Institute. It's not like I had a pattern and trend mentor. So I think it's a gift. We all have gifts.
What is the actual evolution of that process? Like you mentioned, sitting down with tons of companies, tons of entrepreneurs. Is there an actual evolution for this? Like, do you sit down, map it out, or is it just 1 second you get an aha moment?
It's really interesting, because it's also, what's important to know is I have OCD and ADD. Okay, so please understand, these gifts are curses as much as they are blessings. So for me, it's this process of silence, for lack of a better term. Okay, and so what it is I spent 20 years. 2 hours every week in a Starbucks. So Starbucks is my sacred place where I go sit there. And while it's absolute chaos around me, it's like the perfect OCD, ADD environment where I am so hyper-focused. It's scary. And I work from a legal pad. And so I sit there with my legal pad and my pen. And so even this model I talk about, the 6 key components, it came to me in a Starbucks. And so it's this very thoughtful, contemplative time that I have with myself. And I'm writing, I'm constantly writing and illustrating and models. And so it's an iterative process. So it's not like, boom, one day there was a model. You should have seen what this model looked like in year 2. It was this the clunkiest, messiest thing you've ever seen. And then what I do is I teach it to people, and I teach it over and over, and I have them poke holes in it and they tell me what's wrong with it. So it's just this iterative process where these things are certainly discovered. They come to me. I hone and refine them. So it's a ton of reps, man. And that's the OCD. It is not sane, the effort and energy I put into creating things, but I love it. I mean, I love it. I can't say it strongly enough.
Can you actually talk about that iterative process for you and your company? Because it wasn't just an overnight success. Like, it took years and years and years to build that. And I'm wondering what that's like in the trenches during those times when you think you're onto something and then you know what, maybe it's not working. You got to iterate. What is that process like over multiple years and multiple decades?
Yeah, well, so here's the best way. One of the best ways to say it I can think of, because it's a really hard thing to describe, but if anything, I hope that your audience is hearing that it is hard work. In other words, if you're going to build a company, you've got to be obsessed. But there's a way to do it balanced, but in the time that you're working, you've got to be obsessed. And so for me, the best way to describe this is in creating the EOS process, okay, which is basically EOS is a process, a set of tools, and a model. And then so we help a company implement that system in their business. Entrepreneurial operating system. And so it's a system for operating their business, harmoniously orchestrating all that human energy. And again, if you want to see everything I've created and I'm working on, go to GINOWICKMAN.com. That's the epicenter of everything, even though we're talking about Entrepreneurial Leap mostly here. But using that as the example, like I said, 5 years, 500 sessions, 50 clients, I probably tested, honed, refined 200 different tools, ideas, concepts, thoughts. And I called it pulling levers, so I lovingly call it pulling levers. And so if you think of like a science and animals, and every time the monkey pulls the lever, a banana pops out and it learns that, oh, when you pull that lever, it's a good thing. Well, as crude as that sounds, as I'm creating this, I'm testing all this stuff on clients. And when they give me their problem that I've now heard for the 100th time, and I give them a tool to solve it, they either smile because it worked or they frown because it didn't work. And the tools that just didn't work every time, 100% of the time, I threw them out. And the ones that absolutely did work, I kept. So at the end of the day, there are 20 tools in the EOS process. That's it. We teach every client 20 tools. They embed them in their organization. I could have taught them 200 tools, but I believe in a very simplistic 20-80 approach to the world. Just teach the world the 20% that gets 80% of the results. And that's the highest return on time invested. So that's the best way I can describe it, is I just kept testing, honing, trying, refining, practicing on real people on my target market. And when they smiled every time, made more money, ran better businesses, felt in more control, lived their ideal lives, then that tool works. That was a keeper. Does that make any sense?
No, it does. And I'll toot your own horn here for a second. So your book Traction is actually one of the books I've been gifted the most. So it's people who own businesses. There's a few in that 10 to 15 range, also a few that have plus 100, and they've all gifted this book and they're like, yeah, this was transformational for us. So yeah, it's very impactful. The companies that do implement it. I am really intrigued. You mentioned that 80-20 and putting the highest return on your time. You're talking about spending 2 hours a week in Starbucks for the last 20 years, meaning you put considerable thought into the amount of time you're spending there. Please elaborate and explain what that does for you, those 2 hours each week.
Yeah. And by the way, that is the best 2 hours of the week. So in the highest gain and the most productive. So the best way I can describe it, and again, I'm going to keep touching on the 10 disciplines. And if you're curious about that, that's the10disciplines.com, the number 10. These are these breadcrumbs that I leave and ultimately realize these 10 disciplines that I live by to manage and maximize my energy. So this is another one of those 10 disciplines, and it's called Be Still. Okay. And so there's power. We are racehorses, as I already talked about. And the whole idea is to help you live your optimal life. And one of the ways to do that is to stop at intervals, because we run so hard. We need to stop at intervals and let our soul catch up. Okay. And so when we stop and sit in silence for 30 minutes, I like 2 hours, again, of what I call my clarity break, Starbucks time, this thinking time to contemplate. I literally get to stop, tune out the chaos, bring myself down to the ground and let my soul catch up. And I gain such clarity, because then everything that's going on comes so clear. The biggest issues are before me, clarity around the solutions to those issues, my priorities. And so, I'm a big believer in meditation, again, or prayer or contemplation or journaling, whatever you call it for you and whatever you do, but it's stopping the chaos at intervals, just taking a deep breath. Again, when I'm in Starbucks, it's always on a legal pad and I'm writing. The world is clear. And I come out of that a better person, a more productive person, a clearer person, a more calm person. I am a better leader for everyone in my life as of taking those 2 hours.
Yeah, I follow a very similar path in terms of just getting stillness, clarity, allowing that mind to really explore some of the things that's been going on. That has been extremely, extremely helpful. You mentioned that birthday party that your wife threw for you, the surprise birthday. That was like one of those aha moments in terms of knowing yourself. What were the aha moments in your entrepreneurial journey? I mean, I know you've been through some serious hardships. Any that you were like, you know what? That was so difficult, but because of that, I am such a better entrepreneur.
Yeah. Well, there's a bunch of them. So one is, I've been broke 3 times. I was broke at 21, I was broke at 25, and I was broke at 32. And my goal in my 20s, I wanted to be a millionaire by the time I was 30. I achieved it by the time I was 31, and then I lost everything. And so the first lesson was, when you set a goal to become a millionaire, include in the goal to keep the millions. So I got the goal done, but I forgot the second part of it. So, but a lot is learned when you lose everything. And so there I was with a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. I went from a millionaire to $200,000 in debt. That was brutal. So you learn a lot. What I learned about that, though, is I have become a very conservative saver. Okay. I was a great saver all through my 20s. I was a money machine in my 20s. I made great money, but there's the 9% of the world does not get the definition of financial independence. And so us racehorses, we start making good money and we think we're financially set because money's coming in. That's not financial independence. So, financial independence, you have enough money socked away somewhere. The interest is paying your lifestyle. Okay. And so if you want to have $100,000 a year lifestyle, you need $2 million bucks sitting in an account somewhere, throwing you 5%. People don't get that. So that's what I learned. And at 32, sitting there, borderline collapsing in my kitchen with my wife, I said, enough. I was such a risk taker. So I took a very conservative approach and saved at least 10%. I was probably saving upwards of 30 to 40% of my income at certain points. So that was the first big lesson. But then I also applied it to my business because I'm also, teaching the world, always have 6 months cash flow sitting in an account, both your personal account, business account, to survive no revenue coming in, no income coming in for 6 months. There's a calm and a peace that comes over you.
Real quick with going broke. I mean, I feel like your true colors and stripes were shown there. Like after going broke the second time, it's not, entrepreneurship is not for me. And then the third to like talk me through what's going on in Gino's head during this time.
Yeah. Well, it sucks. The first 2 times, I just thought that's how it worked. I was around so many people that went broke. It was almost like, so it seemed like just kind of the natural course of things. The third time was the really tough one when I realized I have an issue. I mean, this is not just a coincidence at this point. This is like DNA, and I have got to I had to rewire my brain because that is what I knew. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I
just keep going. I don't even care.
Right. Exactly. It was just so extremely painful. And I listen, I was a golden boy in my 20s, man. Everything I touched turned to gold. I was a pretty sharp kid, pretty smart, turned around a business, did a lot of great stuff, made a lot of money, but none of that mattered. I mean, it's like all clicked where, I have a problem. So I just became very conservative. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's what goes on there. But nonetheless, what's crazy is I started this business, EOS Worldwide, creating EOS. Ultimately, the book I wrote in Traction, ironically, I started that business. I was 1 year in when the bottom fell out. So I had a nice little nest egg when I started that business. I lost everything, but yet I still stayed fully committed that I was going to turn this into a business. Although I did put a stake in the ground with my wife where I said, if I cannot cover our lifestyle by this date, I'll go try something else. But failure was not going to be an option. And I'm a hard worker and I'm a pretty good earner, thank God. So that I just went to work and worked my way out and built what I believed I could build.
Was that inner conviction? Is that something, once again, you've had your entire life? Or, I mean, I don't know. I'm just thinking of like time number 3. It's like that inner conviction's got to be questioned.
Right. But let's go right. You got that right. Let's go back to the 6 essential traits. And one is driven. And the fact that these can't be taught. I am just a very driven person. Listen, it is a blessing and a curse. Okay. It is a curse to be this driven. I wish I knew what contentment felt like. I heard it's really nice. And I'd like to visit it sometime, but I'm just driven. I when I sold the business, everybody thinks I'd be retiring and riding off to the sunset, 3 years ago when I did that. There's so much to accomplish in this world. There's so much to do. There's so many people to help. I love it, but I do take a lot of time off, so let's get to another discipline. Take time off. I take 160 days off a year at this point in my life. Through that whole hellacious story I shared with you, for 21 years, I've taken the month of August off every year. I take a 1-month sabbatical. So I'm fanatical about the balance. But man, when I am working, it is intense. I work 40 weeks a year, 55 hours a week, and I maximize every second of those 55 hours. It is intense as hell, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Yeah, that oscillatory nature of life is really important. Stress recovery. I have to imagine a lot of people's ears perked up when you said you take 160 days off per year. What do you do well as a leader of the companies that you operate in order to be able to take that time off and let that business continue to thrive?
Surround yourself with great people. It's a simple formula.
Yeah.
Read Traction and apply everything that's in that book. How about that? There's your answer. Build a great leadership team. Build a great leadership team, and you will be able to take whichever month you choose off every year.
Thinking about leadership, I'm thinking about like how leaders develop. I know we've talked a lot about that. For you, how do you approach just your personal development? You seem like you really are intentional and cultivate the right practices. How do you approach that personal development?
Boy, I don't know if it's that methodical, but I have this thing that I've been saying for 22 years that I want to get closer to my soul. And so in my mind, it's like this: in here somewhere is this perfect ball of energy that is my soul, and it wants to fully live 100% it. And I don't know what percentage, like I said, I am to where that is, but for 22 years, I seek things that help me shed layers of whatever I did to myself, to when I was 32, realize I built a concrete 3-foot wall around me to protect me from the world. And so I do things that chip away at that and get me closer to my soul. And so that's the awareness. And I just do lots of different stuff. I have 2 friends. We go to Boulder, Colorado every year in May. And our goal is to find some amazing experience that makes us shed a little, cry a little, get a little closer to our soul. So I'm just always hyper aware of what's going to help me be more me. And it's all kinds of stuff. Sometimes it's something very practical and businessy, and sometimes it's very emotional and intangible.
I'm thinking about that whole seek to shed. It's almost like your sale of the company 3 years ago. You were shedding that part to allow your next best self to shine through there. Is that the evolution here?
Yeah. And again, and I'll try to say this quickly, but, let's go back to the 10 disciplines. So once you figure out your work container, okay, and that work container is the amount of time you're going to work. So for me, again, like I said, I work 40 weeks a year, 55 hours a week. And anytime the job becomes 1 minute more than that, I delegate that off. I will not sacrifice that. And so I have made a big delegation every quarter of my life for 25 years running. And my income has 25x as a result of it. And so when I sold the company, that was a delegation. I had to delegate an entire company to free up my energy and my creativity. That weight was becoming too heavy and was not fully letting me be fully me. So I delegated a company in that particular quarter. But every quarter I delegate something off to get me closer to fully being my craft, my value, who I am to the world. Hopefully that made sense.
No, it does. I have to imagine you've become one hell of a delegator. With 4 big ones a year, you're delegating around 80 over your lifespan here.
So people that struggle with this, they get, insecure, heebie-jeebies, freak out. I love to delegate. Delegating is like heaven to me. Heaven.
That's awesome. Well, one of the things I'm really intrigued by is, for a lot of young entrepreneurs, one of the biggest questions, or the most frequent questions I receive, is around mentorship. Now, I know your father's even written a book on mentors and mentorship. I am wondering how you've approached that in your own life, and then any just overall advice you can give to someone younger in their entrepreneurial journey. Yeah,
well, so for me, I was blessed in my 20s with 2 amazing mentors. My dad is my greatest mentor. And then a gentleman by the name of Sam Cupp, who actually my dad introduced me to. So I kind of got lucky. My first mentor was right there in my house. And then my second mentor was introduced by my dad. But I am a very strong proponent of finding a mentor, a person who's willing to take you under their wing and leave a legacy. Okay. And so in this Entrepreneurial Leap Passion Project and book, I teach a 5-step mentoring track. And so if you go to that website, e-leap.com, you'll find that tool. And so for anyone out there that loves to mentor people and wants to mentor entrepreneurs, click on that. But for anyone that wants a mentor, click on that so you understand that. You'll be a better protege for your mentor. But what I urge is, look out 10 years and think about the person you want to be or the business you want to build, and go find somebody who is where you want to be. You're going to have to ask 20 people before you get a yes. But I believe that mentoring relationship is the best type of mentoring relationship. The good news is, when I was 20, that was the only source of mentorship. Now we have YouTube and masterminds and so many vehicles, podcasts, to get mentored without a physical mentor, you can still pull this off. I write an entire chapter in the book on mentoring. I walk you through the process for how to do it, but I think it's vital. And so for me, I have just always found mentors along the journey, and it was always looking for somebody who is where I want to be and attaching myself to them however the hell I could do that. I like literally in my 20s, I would have worked for somebody for free for a year if I knew it was somebody who wants to leave me their legacy, teach me everything they know, because a great mentor, that's what they want to do. They want to impart their wisdom on people that will carry that legacy forward. And all of my mentors can count on me for that. And I will always acknowledge them for how they impacted my life.
Yeah, one of those invaluable pieces of advice. It makes me think about Nick Kokonis, who we've had on a few times. He's an investor, entrepreneur, legendary restaurateur. And to start his career off, he actually went to a legendary investor and said, I will pay you if I can come work for you, because the knowledge I'm going to receive from you is invaluable to me at this stage of my career. I usually ask the question, if you could do this long form conversation, sit down with anyone dead or alive, but I would love to know if you could have a mentor, anyone dead or alive, who would you love to shadow for a year?
So mentor is an interesting word. So allow me a little bit longer answer here, but I'll land this plane relatively quickly, because this is a two-part answer for me, because my mind immediately goes to, God, if I could spend a year with Henry Ford, Walt Disney, or Steve Jobs, holy crap, that would be incredible. But then for some reason, Abraham Lincoln is like the embodiment of, if I could really spend time with someone. But Abraham Lincoln and George Washington are a coin toss for me. So I think, because George Washington was an incredible entrepreneur. So they're a coin toss for me. But at the end of the day, if there were anyone on the planet, it's one of those two, because I think those two are probably two of the greatest leaders of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned Mastermind Groups a minute ago, and you just mentioned Henry Ford. I'm about a half mile from Henry Ford, Harry Firestone, and Thomas Edison's winter homes. And so they used to just literally spend months together. And I'm thinking, what were the conversations like of three titans of industry, literally just kind of shooting the shit, spending months together every single year? If I could have been a fly on the wall for that, I would love it. But, we've hit on so much here. Like I mentioned, I mean, your work, your books have really been impactful, not just for me, though. Some people who are mentors to me in my life and have gotten tremendous value from it. So I want to know, where should we send the listeners, right? Like there's a lot of people who are like, wow, like I want to know, first off, if I'm an entrepreneur. And then second, there's those people that are like, you know what? I am an entrepreneur. Gino can help me get there further. But where should we direct them? Where do you want them going?
Yeah, we covered so much ground, and we had all the content. I always love to give one answer. Unfortunately, I have to give three. So if your audience will
please do
bear with me on this. So first of all, let's talk about Entrepreneurial Leap and this book that I've written, this passion project to help anyone who thinks they're an entrepreneur become an entrepreneur. So e-leap.com is the epicenter of all things Entrepreneurial Leap. Please go there. Lots of free tools, ton of content. We put a video out every week, an article out every other week. And I would also like to add, for anyone out there that loves and wants to teach and help entrepreneurs in the making, hit the collaborator button and become a collaborator, because what we do is we join forces with collaborators that want to teach this content. We give it to them for free, total open source, abundance based, and you get to teach this content to the world for free. So e-leap.com. The second thing is, for everything you've heard us talk about, if you can't figure out where to start, just go to GINOWICKMAN.com for everything I'm working on, all the content I've created. That's kind of the epicenter of everything I've done. And then the last thing I would say, if these 10 disciplines for managing and maximizing your energy have intrigued you, go to the 10 disciplines. It's the number 10. And we're going to be launching something really cool there soon. But that's ultimately all the pieces come together with 10 disciplines. And that's where we want to help people truly live their optimal life. And we're going to be doing some really interesting things there.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to that. Well, as always, all of that will be linked up in the show notes. But Gino Wickman, I cannot thank you enough for joining us on What Got You There.
Sean, had a blast.
We got you there with Sean Delaney.